Hello, everybody. I'm getting a little worried that I'm only seeing a couple people here.
Still got 3 minutes, buddy. We got
I
hope.
got
I,
hope. Yeah, I hope there's nothing wrong with the link.
I
I'm
got
here. It
easy.
worked.
Excellent. Mark is emailing me saying it's not.
I clicked the part that said follow this link here or something. I think you wrote it out at the bottom of the message.
Yeah, that's the one. Right on. So, morning, Dave.
Morning. Hi, Chris.
Good morning, Dave.
Let's see. There we are. A 1, 2, 3, 4. I think we need one more to get the meeting going. I think Mark is on his way here. Looks like Mark didn't get the message that it was only digital. Carrie, I'm going to do a quick count, see if we're going to make quorum or not.
Perfect.
With 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we can go. We have 10 current members and 6 of them are present. So, Carrie, I believe we do have quorum.
Great. Well, welcome everybody to our July virtual Housing Commission meeting. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Looks like it. All right. So I think we will first start with introductions. So I think I'm going to just kind of go down the list of attendees. And if you want to say hi and introduce yourself, that would be great. I will start. I'm Carrie Fleischer. I'm the chair of the commission. Next I have is Briar.
Briar Smith with Kennedy.
Thanks, Briar. Megan, is that you, city planner, or is that Dave?
We'll come back to city planner, I think. Oh, Carrie, you're muted.
Next is Dave Bennett.
Good morning. Dave Bennett, South County Representative.
Chris?
Hi, I'm Chris Luckenmeyer, Major Employer Representative.
I'm going to, Sarah Dental.
Hi, I'm Sarah Dental. I am the real estate community representative.
And then Kristen?
Hi, I'm Kristen Koptiuk, at-large representative based in Rockaway.
Hey, did I miss anybody? Oh, there's Dave Madison. He just popped in. You want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Dave Madison, Housing Commission member.
Thank you.
And
Next,
I'm not coming on board. Oh, there it is. Someday. Sorry.
perfect. Next, well, I think we have, did I cover everybody, Parker?
Except for myself. My name is Parker
Please.
Salmons, and I am the housing coordinator for Tillamook County.
All right, great. Next, we have quite a few guests, so I'm gonna just kind of mention them if they'd like to quickly introduce themselves. That'd be great. First on my list is Clayton Taylor.
Hey guys, Clayton Taylor, West of West Architecture, and also representing Maker Development as well.
Thank you. Maria Carrillo. Sorry if I said that wrong.
Good morning. No, you're fine. It is Maria Carrillo, and I work with the Economic Development Council, EDC in Tillamook.
Welcome and thank you. Sarah.
Sarah Lou Heath's microphone is not working, so I will introduce her. She is from Colpack, and I think we've all met her.
And then Steve
She's
Wade.
the deputy director, pardon me.
Hi, yeah, Steve Wade, here representing Maker Development.
And then Will, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Will Chappell with the Tillamook Headlight Herald and North Coast Citizen.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody. Okay, well, we are going to go ahead and move on. Is there anybody that has a mission minute this morning? Feel free to raise your hand or wave frantically at the screen, and we will give you some time. All right, well, I think we will just move on. Is there any members of the public that would like to address the commission this morning? And there will be another opportunity at the end of the meeting as well. All right, well, we are gonna go ahead and I'm going to turn this over to Parker for new commissioner interviews.
Yeah, just wanted to give everybody an update on, we have received, I believe, 4 applications for our Housing Commission seats that are open, and the period of open application does end on the 21st. So if there is anybody that you would very much like to see apply, now is the time to put the screws on them, get that application in. And then over the next couple weeks, I'll be working with Commissioner Scar and Carrie to schedule interviews. And we'll be reporting back at the next Housing Commission meeting with the progress and results. That's actually all the the update I have for that. I might have budgeted a little too much time for that. So as long as I'm not going to surprise Steve by asking him to come on in just a moment, this is me giving him a heads up. And does anybody have any comments or questions about the application process or interviews or anything regarding the new commission member?
The only question I have, Parker, is I'm a member at large, and if we didn't receive any applications or anyone that we want to bring on as a nonprofit, is that something that would be helpful, or would I need to apply to switch to that? I have no interest and I don't care, don't get me wrong. But if that would be helpful, I guess I'm putting out there that I'd be happy to do whatever I would need to do to get switched into nonprofit if we don't happen to get a different nonprofit representative.
Thank you very much, Briar. Yeah, I will find out what the process would be for that, and we very well might ask you to do that. That could be very helpful. So thank you.
Perfect.
All right. If no other comments for the Open Housing Commission seats, I'm going to turn it over to Stephen Wade. And Steve's going to talk to us about the status of a potential Tillamook workforce housing project. And then we'll have some questions and answers, and I'm sure we'll get some great information. So Steve, whenever you're ready, you can take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Parker, and hope everyone's having a great summer. And thanks for giving us time to talk this morning. I think how we were going to start this was I was going to let Clayton, the other half of Maker, and also West of West Architect, kind of unpack this new project we want to do next to the Adventist Hospital. So I'll just pass it over to him, and then I'll follow up with a few bullet points, and then we'll take questions. Your mic's off, Clay.
Parker, am I able to share on this?
Give it a try. I think it'll give me a request, I believe.
It's just letting me say only meeting organizers and presenters can share.
Okay, give me 1 sec. I think I have to make you a meeting organizer. Make a presenter. All right, there you go. Steve, I'm going to do the same for you now.
Cool.
Let's see. Somehow I lost screen. Just a second. I don't have it like removed my screen here. There we go. Let's try that. Oh gosh, where'd it go? Steve, if you're able to share.
I'm pulling up your materials in case I need to right now.
Kicked me off of the. I can't see the group here.
Do you want to pop out and pop back in? I will make you a presenter again.
Let me share. Is it sharing by any chance?
It is not.
Gosh, what is up with this? Oh, there we go. Sorry, guys. It's not letting me keep the. I'll sign back in here in a second.
I'm also able to share if you just want me to roll through this for you. I'm happy to.
Did he just bounce off? I think he's coming back. Yeah, that might be better if you want to just scroll through it. Parker and Clay can talk about it.
Yeah,
sure looks beautiful.
It sure does.
I don't. Does everyone know where this site is? Do you want to unpack that, Parker, just a little bit?
Sure. So this site is directly south of the hospital on 3rd Street. This is the Oftmeyer property that is in our brownfield program. Right now, the brownfield program is waiting for the phase 2 results to come back on this site, but it is the intent of the brownfield program to deliver deliverable or developable property as property leaves the brownfield program. So this is directly south. Does everybody know the property? It is right after 3rd Street, turns into 131, right past the hospital. Dave, you're on mute.
That would be west of the hospital.
West of the hospital. Sorry, my orientation's that's like southwest.
I'm back on, Parker. Sorry, guys. Glad I sent it to everybody right before this. So, Parker, if you're driving, this isn't very long, so you can just. That's okay.
We can hardly hear you, Clayton.
I can't hear you, Clay.
Click the arrow next to the microphone button on the top ribbon, and I'm guessing you've switched to a different microphone somehow. Sorry, Clay. I think he's popping out and popping in again. Yes.
We'll get there.
So when you say it's west of the hospital, is it just over that river where that farm is, or is that open lot right now?
Right before the bridge.
Okay.
There's a
Thanks.
small house. There's a little teeny house there on the property,
Correct.
I think.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Can you guys hear me now by any chance?
No, it's still very, very quiet. It's like it's on an AirPod or something in your pocket.
Now.
It's still pretty far away.
Is anybody not familiar with the brownfield program? Good.
I am familiar with it.
Let's see if this worked.
Okay, let's see if that works.
There, yeah, that's great.
Let it rip.
All right.
All right.
So real fast then, I apologize to you guys for that. So what Steve and I've done is looked at this site, and Parker kind of said this is a kind of great location in a spearheaded kind of project for the city right now. So we were trying to test fit a project on the site and see how many units it could yield and run through all the kind of basics of it. So what you're seeing is 2 3-story buildings and some small kind of outpost buildings on the project as well. If we go to the next slide real quick, Parker. This is kind of us testing the site. There's a few things, and Parker probably already introduced it as a brownfield site. So there's some cleanup going on with the dirt, which is a big part of it. But once that's done, that sort of unlocks the site. There's also a FEMA floodplain hazard across part of the site. So we have a dashed line that tracks across that. But on the other side is the fact that the site's super well located, and it's got a high allocation of density, which City of Tillamook is allowed. So we can do almost 100 units per acre here. But with the restraints of the floodplain, parking, and all that stuff, that we kind of get down to pretty much this is what the site would yield. So this is what we call the yield study. Like we put together all of the requirements we know that are out there and try to produce what the site could be in concept, right? So the south end of the site is the 2 buildings, 18 units each. We're doing a mixture of 2 beds and 1 beds on the site. Ideally, we're looking at, in concept, it was like, what if Adventist, was this a great resource for nurses to live in? So it's got a strong connection to the Adventist site next to it, just to the east. And the remainder of our site, we've utilized for parking and tried to split it up in a way to create some recreation fields and community garden areas on the site as well. Again, those are areas that are in the floodplain that we don't really want to build in. We can, but we want to try to avoid that. But if we can utilize that part of the site for other benefits of this site or maybe the neighboring property as the hospital. So the idea is that the housing is kind of leveraged to kind of unlock the site and get use of it for kind of all kind of neighboring parties, basically. We've flipped, there's a lot of technical stuff to the site layout as well. I don't want to go into that too much, but if we go to the next page, I think we see a lot of the project is how we, design and think about the parking lot from a standpoint of how it can take water and, not become just a big paved zone, but it can be maybe 50% green and 50% parking. That's kind of our theory on this. We're trying to make sure we, make a very kind of sustainable thought on how we park the, I think 1.7 parking spaces per unit on the site right now. If we go forward one more, this is the last slide I think we have. This is just a typical unit. So both buildings look like this at 3 stories tall. Again, all kind of defined by the current code. So there's 2 bedrooms on the ends. There's what we call junior 1 bedrooms. They're just like a little bit smaller. And then there's the larger 1 bedrooms in the middle. Every unit has a great walk-up experience, has access to the outdoors. So it's kind of like the project you guys saw on Manzanita, but we've enlarged the plan a little bit to add the 2 bedrooms because we think that's probably more needed here. And this site also allows us to go 3 stories where in Manzanita we cannot do that right now. So as we study this, I'm kind of teeing up Steve here. The site in a lot of different ways has become, a much clearer pathway towards getting housing happening faster, basically, on this site. So let me kind of hand it over to Steve, and he can go through his bullet points on this project and a little update on Manzanita as well.
Great, thanks, Clay. I'll try to keep this brief. So basically, I was talking to Parker, and he just wanted to know what the county can do to help make this project a success and move it along as quickly as possible. So the first thing we discussed is helping with 100% pre-leasing the 36-unit project we just shared with you. This provides us a pathway to obtaining our bank debt. Having an equity partner on workforce housing deals, we're finding is becoming increasingly difficult as we cannot deliver the returns they need because they basically want to see market rate returns, and these projects just quite frankly don't have that kind of return. So by 100% pre-leasing it, ideally with the hospital next door, which has a good bond rating, good credited bond rating, that will in turn, we would get a term sheet to them, pre-lease this project and be able to go to a bank and most likely obtain 100% financing for construction of this project.
Steve, could you talk a little bit more about the bond rating and why that's important?
Well, and I might pivot back to Clay. So Clay and I have brought in a developer partner to join us on this project, as well as the Manzanita project. Clay, do you want to talk about those guys just quickly?
Yeah, and I can also talk about bond writing, but they've had a lot of success where if they can get, you know, accredited company take the pre-lease of a project like this, like basically sign up to, you know, ensure that they are going to be leasing. That has been a way that they've found to get, you know, enough confidence from the banks to get the pre-leasing happening. So the group's called Bayspring. They've worked a lot with institutional capital, institutional leases. So they're bringing a lot of this kind of knowledge in about how to get this thing and get around the kind of bank problems that are currently there. Without the pre-leasing, the bank wants you to deposit basically 40% of the cost of the project before you build it, which is, that's what's really hard right now. You know, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, we could have put 5% down and built a project, you know. That's not possible now. But if you're using a high credited group that's clearly going to lease it, and you just kind of tie that together before, that is something that the banks is like, okay, you're good. You know, that is a solid pathway. We're basically overcompensating for the bank's risk assessment, right, of any project right now. So that in simple terms, that seems to be a strong path and a strong option on something like this. And the project's so small that it's not, we're not asking for 200 units to be leased or something like that. It's a very scalable project for what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, roughly $8 million project, 36 doors. This project is a little different than the Manzanita project we're working on, because the Manzanita project, the dirt is considerably more expensive and the site work is more than triple. So we believe this site presents us with an opportunity to move forward much quicker with your cooperation, and then we could use this basically as a model to copy and paste over on the Manzanita site by having partners in place and financing. So do you want me to jump back to my couple other bullet points real quick?
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's good. So just a couple other things we need from the county, city county. We need the site delivered to us shovel ready, meaning it must be completely remediated. And if that house that sits on the site right now, which it's my understanding it's abandoned, if it needs remediation, and it sounds like it's pretty toxic in there with asbestos and mold and stuff, that would need to be remediated and demolished as well. We're only seeking to purchase, as Clay pointed out, 1.87 acres of the total site. The other 1.32 acres of the site is in the floodplain. We cannot build on that. So I guess that's something I was going to discuss with Parker, and I'm also working with Sarah, real estate broker, to see what the owner would want to do. If he just wants to include that with the purchase the purchase price we're offering, then, you know, we could just donate it to the city. I think you could put like a playground, community raised bed gardens there, tennis courts, whatever, and make good use of that space, which would also add maybe some like amenities to this project. But that's really to be determined once we have further conversations with the seller and kind of figure out the best use for that land. But we don't want to own it, manage it, because that would just require us to just basically fence it up and have to maintain it, and we can't really do anything with it. The third thing I wanted to mention, the funding, as Parker knows, because we continue our conversations, we need to obtain roughly north of $1 million for this project, and that would be need to be forgivable and grant funding. I know, you know, Parker and I were working on the DEQ stuff, the OFA funding, and then it's my understanding there's some funding coming from Tillamook County as well. And it sounds like those things are being figured out right now, and I guess we'll have some clarity on them. I believe one at the end of this month, and then hopefully the OFA in September, and your county in October. And that just helps the overall cost of the project that would be applied towards construction and land purchase. But basically, just to sum up, with success on this site, we can kind of have a more clear and direct path to success on the Manzanita site, where we're coming up with some roadblocks because the cost of the land and the site work is more than triple of this site, and it just is making it impossible to pencil and keeping us from offering really any returns to equity partners. So with that site, we would have to do the same with this site, where we need to pre-lease it and basically just source, 75% loan to value debt from a bank, and just do the construction that way. I guess the upside with Manzanita, though, it's worth mentioning, is the dirt is 100% clean, so there's no remediation there. So it's just the issue. One of the things that's popped up is we now have to come up with more funding on that site to cover all the infrastructure that wasn't initially there. We were under the impression Manzanita was gonna, with that I believe it's 2.7 million, they were going to take down some of that infrastructure costs, sewer, water. But it sounds like those funds are now not available, and they're going to push that off onto the developers. That's $1 million we don't have in our underwriting. So we need to figure out whether that's working with the landowners to absorb that somehow, source other funds to absorb it. I don't know if there's any like TIF funds out there. It's something that Parker and I are discussing, and I think the general consensus is let's get a win and a success with this smaller site that's much easier to develop, and we know we have built-in renters, and just get a win, and then pivot over to the other site and apply what partnerships we've created and the path that we've now created, that we can move forward with Manzanita, and hopefully work with the city of Manzanita to figure out a way to absorb some of these really high infrastructure costs, upwards of $3 million, which I'm sure you can imagine that kind of infrastructure on 36 units it just doesn't work. So.
Steve, about you broke down the cost that you need to, or the price of land that you need to pay for a workforce housing project for it to be a success. And I think you broke that down to a by door basis. Could you go over that with the Housing Commission here?
Yeah. So workforce housing, you basically want the dirt to be around $10,000 a door. A normal market rate project where the returns are much higher, you're looking at 20 to 25,000 a door. This site next to the hospital is our offer is going to reflect 36 units and 10,000 a door, $350,000. Hopefully that's received positively. It's our understanding that the land was just given to him, and he does want housing to be built there. The Manzanita site, on the other hand, because the city of Manzanita is requiring us to buy all this extra land because it's 13 units per acre, that is over $30,000 a door. That's more than you would ever pay on a market rate project, and that's one of the problems we're coming up against, as well as I mentioned, the infrastructure on this site next to the hospital is, I think I want to say roughly $900,000, and on the Manzanita site, it's near $3 million because of now this additional infrastructure stuff that we, didn't have in our underwriting when we started this project. So, was that clear? Did that help Parker?
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to
with
take
that.
any questions.
Let's take some questions.
I saw your hand up, Dave.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions for you. So this is a very interesting project. And just to make sure I understand, it's an $8 million project for 36 units. And about how many square feet of housing will that total to?
I think Clay's got those spreadsheets up in front of him.
Just so you hear my mic's on there. Yeah. So we are. It's about 22,000 square feet for the whole project.
22,000 square feet at a cost of $8 million. So we're just off the top of my head, that's a little under $400 a foot. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, when we look at construction costs, we're not adding in. Steve's adding in all the other things. So the land cost in that, So and you're not wrong, but cost of construction is probably around 270 a foot just for building. But when you add in land value and all the other things, you get up to that number. Yes.
The soft costs, the architecture, engineering, our fees to the project, insurance, attorneys, all that stuff that adds up in the soft costs and the
SDC fees,
the SDC fees, permit fees, everything like that.
Let's see, this is workforce housing, which I understand is rents are up to 120% of AMI. Is that kind of what you're thinking?
We pegged this at 100% AMI. So
yeah, we're not going to go over 100% AMI. We don't think that the community can absorb anything higher than that. We have to keep the rents lower. And part of another upside to doing that is that we can get the property tax abatement from the county for keeping our rents at 100% AMI or lower. And we just think it's a win for everybody if we do that. It also alleviates any anxiety about leasing these up. If we came in there and did market rate and rents were well north of where we're pegging them, I would worry that they would lease up. Of course, it would pencil better and we'd be able to offer better returns to equity partners, but it's like it's one or the other, right? You keep the rents low, we can't really pay an equity partner. So we just have to source 100% debt. If it's market rate, then we can, go out and source private capital and pay juicy returns and all that, but that's not this. So the pre-leasing component of this, working with the county, or at least teeing us up with the people that we need to present our term sheets to, is critical for the bank.
So given that the hospital's professionals might have an appetite for this kind of housing, does it need to be 100% of AMI, or can we go to market with hospital employees?
It'll come down to trying to hit the right percentage of a salary cap, right? So you could go to 120 if you wanted to. I think the goal, like Steve says, is trying to keep it at that 100 to get the tax abatement component. And that's where it's modeled now, but I think there's nothing stopping it really from changing aside from that. So, and some of these we've seen people get right to 120 because that they're pushing as high as they can, and that gets pretty close to market in the area. So,
Steve,
I just want to mention something to Dave. So Dave, if I've modeled this repeatedly, and if I push the rents to 120 AMI and then we have to pay the taxes, it's really a no-win, right? So it's like now I'm pushing another maybe $50,000 out of the project. I've raised the rents, but now I have to pay a $70,000 tax bill.
Yeah, basically the only person that loses is the tenant. We don't gain anything. So
we don't gain anything. So it makes more sense to us to actually keep the rents lower and know that we're going to rent them quickly, or block lease this whole thing out to the hospital and not have to pay the taxes during the 10-year hold.
Yeah.
How interesting. Gosh, it's an offset there. Steve, did I understand you to say that with 100% pre-lease that you could get 100% financing from the bank?
Our partners that we spoke to earlier this week when we went over our detailed underwriting, they've done projects like this, and they believe with this hospital pre-leasing the project with their B+ credit rating, that a bank would step up and loan us the construction funding.
Or the construction funding, but not the total $8 million.
Well,
that's it.
well,
Yeah.
that's why I outlined that some of the other funds that the county has, the forgivable grants, the OFA loan, those, if those are included, that's $1 million right there. So that would cover basically the soft costs. Then you've got the 7 million for the construction. 7 million, it's valued right now with a conservative cap rate. This project's valued at about 10.5 million total. So that's basically a 70 to 30 loan to value, which banks would be comfortable with.
Right.
Sorry,
Dave,
don't want to ask. Sorry, go ahead.
It might be worth going over the pro forma with you at some point, because it's all kind of mapped out there, and that might be
okay
an easier spot to
just two other quick questions. What is the current cap rate now that you're using, Steve, to determine fair market value?
So I've been a commercial broker for a long time, and I have a lot of connections at CBRE and JLL, and I've reached out to them to get current cap rates for this type of a project, and they're modeling it at a 5.35.
Okay, that seems very reasonable. And just last question for you. What kind of return do your equity partners need to get their attention on a project like this?
Equity partners need a multiple of at least 2, and that is just absolutely impossible. Right now, the way this is penciling out, the most we could spit out to an equity partner. So let's just say they give us 2.5 million. We got to give them 5 million back. And that's just at that's just at a multiple of 1x. They need to see a 2x. It's just impossible.
I still believe there's chances that we find someone that maybe wants less, but that's kind of that's the average, you know? So we're trying to take that as the scenario that's in front of us versus what we might find out there, right? So
yeah, and you know, we've presented our Manzanita project to a few groups, and the general feedback or impressions we get is a lot of these folks exist in a world of market rate housing thinking. They do not look at these projects as workforce housing, so they're expecting to bring their 2 million to the table and get 5 million back on top of that or whatever, and that's just simply not possible. You know, it's hard enough to do these deals, and we need, you know, help from the county and the city. Those returns just aren't there. So the way we can get around this is to pre-lease these projects.
Okay, so sorry, just 2 quick thoughts for you. Number one, if it costs you $8 million to build and it's going to have a value of 10 million, there's your 2x there for your equity partners. That's a thought for you. And there may be some folks locally that would be interested in participating at less than 2x. And so we ought to have that discussion at some point in time.
Yeah, well, you got to remember, we have to cash out refi, and the debt coverage ratio needs to be basically north of 1.25. So we need that loan to value. So we can't give that money back. If we paid off the debt, let's just say we paid off the 8 million, and then there's, you know, 2 million in equity. The bank's not going to give us that 2 million to pay partners. They're just going to refi what we did. They need to see that equity in the project to refi and hold the project.
Sure, but upon a sale, eventual liquidation, there'd be more than 2x there.
Sold, yeah.
Equity partners don't want to sit on the sideline for 7-10 years or whatever. They want to get their money back within 3 years. And that very first year, they need to see a 1x multiple. And by year 3, they need to see it pushing 2.
Okay. Well, there may be some local resources that'd be less burdensome in that regard. So we ought to have that talk. Okay, that's all I got. Thanks.
I just want to say, you know, if I was somebody who brought $1 million to the table, and in 2 years you said, I'm going to give you your $1 million back plus 500,000, I would think that would work for a lot of people out there. But, you know, it's tough, and trying to explain the mission of workforce housing, we're still new in this arena, I think, somewhat with a lot of these folks. So
yeah, my theory is if there's a local stake in the game, local investors, I think that's kind of the best route, you know, because then I think people are getting their money back, but they also are getting the kind of clarity of the community good that they're delivering as part of that investment vehicle. So I think you're kind of matching mission, getting the mission as part of your return, but also a little bit of cash as part of your return, right? So I think that's, to me,
thanks,
that's the
guys.
theoretical story, but I'm still trying to find those people that can make that come to life. So
Let's talk about that. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
But just in summary, Parker walked away for a second, but the whole point of this, just for everybody, was we were like, let's just model a workforce housing project with the easiest pathway forward somewhere in Tillamook County, and this was the site to do it. So it was kind of like, as we've been going through the work on this site, it's like, this is the one that should work. So how can we point to the pieces on this that, like, why are they not working? Get real specific. So again, Steve and I, this was just kind of on the behalf of pursuing the project, and also Parker saying, like, let's just do a test case, essentially. Like, how can we get this to go through? So we've been, again, on our side, it's all just been churning through this with Parker and trying to see, all right, if anywhere in the county, where would it possibly be the most viable option to get something of this scale that really affects the demand of 2,000 units needed right now? So,
Yeah, we see this as a path for a much quicker win for everyone. And then obviously with that, it tees up things that we need for the Manzanita project, because it is a bigger project. It's basically double. So instead of these 2 buildings, it's 4 buildings.
Kristen and Dave have a question. David have a question. David has 2 questions, possibly. It's like 2 little hands raised. Who was first? I couldn't remember.
Let's go with Kristen.
Yeah.
All right. We've been just learning. It sounds like a great project. We've been learning about pre-leasing. And I'm just wondering, did you do any projects already in which you did the pre-leasing part? Like, do you have any concrete example of how that worked out?
The partners we're bringing in have that experience. So they have some that are an example of that.
But you don't know what they are?
Not offhand right now, no.
Let's door behind you.
You should find out so you could tell us.
Yeah.
Because that's like a big piece of the project. And I just want us to understand what that entails and how it makes a difference.
Well, I mean, I can break it down a little bit. Basically, we sit down with the, if it's the hospital, whoever the CEO is, we talk about the project, the unit mix. We make sure that what we're building is what they need. And then we talk about, do they, how much of this do they want to lease? Is the hospital going to be paying the lease? Is this a block lease where they're going to have a master lease for, let's say they do a master lease for 30 units. How long is that for? Then we would create a term sheet. I mean, I've done this in my previous city. I lived in Chicago on some projects. Then we just create a term sheet. We sign, everybody signs the term sheet. Everything's locked in. They put a deposit down in escrow. And that's the deposit on the units. And then we're moving forward.
I'd say it's pretty common, but I think the involvement of a county in the middle of the process.
Aunt Tina tell you? Oh, you're just looking Gladstone. I don't know where Gladstone is. Look, I don't care.
I don't know who that was, but
Briar, you're off mute, Briar. Before you say anything, here we go.
I mean, pre-leasing, block leasing has happened and does happen in a lot of projects, and workforce housing, as Parker unpacked a few, I think the last meeting when you explained the difference between workforce housing and middle income housing. Workforce housing is specific to an organization or a workforce, and our goal is to build this for the hospital next door, which is my understanding they need housing really bad. So we would be doing basically specifically for them, or the majority for them. I think there's a good case to be made. They would probably absorb north of 70% of this
Well, and I think it's fair to say too that this pre-leasing stuff is a really common practice across the country. It isn't necessarily something that happens here, but that probably has more to do with our lack of housing to pre-lease. There's no need to pre-lease when there's no excess housing. So
Exactly.
I think that that's some of what we're dealing with, is that while it's a new concept in Tillamook County, it's a very widespread concept across the country. So,
and it's also especially important because there's not enough housing stock to explain what a one-bedroom apartment market looks like. So
right.
When we bring folks in to look at the project, they say, how do I know you're going to lease this? Because there's no other apartments here. And you can point to demand, but they want 10 projects built in the last 5 years that show that pathway, that make this not risky. So the pre-lease is the kind of next common level to say, well, if there's commitment to lease this, then there's nothing about risking the fact that these will be leased or not. Like everybody on this call has known and seen the demand for housing clearly. Like we're living it and seeing it. But when we bring outside investors in, they're like, I don't understand. Like, there's no apartments. Like, this is why it needs to happen, you know? So
Yeah,
it's
and
like a chicken and egg situation. And the pre-lease is the thing that everyone's like, okay, well, if you have them leased, then that's good. So.
And the first thing they're going to do is flip open CoStar, right? And look up CoStar, the commercial real estate database. And they're going to
It's like Zillow for, yeah.
For commercial, like big multifamily or whatever. And they're going to see nothing. It's a desert of information around there. So they're like, well, okay, how do we know this is even going to work? So yeah, pre-leasing.
And in connection with this, you said that the banks want like 40% deposit on the project ahead of time now, and they used to want 5%. What changed in there? Like, the banks know we are in a housing crisis. Why are they taking advantage of this kind of thing and essentially putting roadblocks?
Do you want to take that, Clay?
You probably don't have the answer, but
it's the same reason why the entire architecture and real estate industry is in a recession right now. The bank interest rates and is the pivotal part of that, but also it's a liquidity problem on the bank side. There's not enough money to lend on the project if it's of a certain level of risk. So those rates were what were given to us from Umpqua Bank in Manzanita. So we were trying to go to a local bank, local lender. Remember last year there was a couple of local banks that blew up in San Francisco, and a lot of people lost a lot of money. It's kind of revolving around those issues of them being, maybe I don't know how it's breaking down, but that's kind of the common thing. And again, nationwide, you're seeing, real hard to break over those numbers, basically. So,
yeah, and then the interest rates on top of the liquidity issue can be pretty devastating. I mean, just a few years ago, I underwrote a project, and our rate was like around 5.5%, and now I'm underwriting this project with a 10% interest rate on the construction loan. And it could be slightly higher because they're just not in a lending mood, is basically the bottom line. We don't want to lend any money on anything right now. If you want our money, show us that there's zero risk. So that's what we have to prove.
Yeah, Kristen, I'm sorry, you're muted. I accidentally muted you.
Oh, sorry. It seems to really up the ante for the urgency of public funding.
Yes, it does. I have some announcements about that coming up here in a minute. So definitely Steve and Clay, you should stick around for it. It's all brand new information.
Okay.
But Kristen, to your question, really, banks have less risky places they can put the money than housing construction right now. And that's really what it comes down to. Dave, I see a hand up for you still. Did you have another one?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I just wanted to say this is a great location. I know the Offmeyers have been dealing with trying to find development on the site for about 20 years. So it's nice to see that you're looking at it. You have multiple options for transportation, by foot, by bicycle, by bus, and you're in the close proximity to shopping and the jobs, which is really nice. Um, I did want to know, have you talked this over with the city, the Tillamook? And the other question I have is how long really until construction? Or have you thought about that yet? Has it gone that far yet?
Yeah, we have not talked to the city on it. I mean, even though we are using kind of by right city standards for it already. So 3 stories, the density allocation, and the parking. But we've basically been trying to model this thing to see if it works and make sure we're getting the right things in play, partnerships, and kind of bringing the biggest issue we have, which is the pre-leasing, to a head to see if that has some weight. We've been pursuing this for probably about a month now, and taking a look at it, and we kind of got to see how far this can go to ensure that it actually has legs going forward. So in terms of a schedule, if we were to get some of the initial funding to start the project and have the pre-lease going, and once that's in play, we probably have about 4 to 6 months of finishing the design and engineering, and then submitting for permit a couple months, and then you're into construction after that. So you're probably about 8-9 months away from starting construction, and then about a year of construction. When that starts is whenever we get enough information to say go, no go on the project.
Right. And the reason I ask that is FEMA, since you're right adjacent to the floodplain, FEMA, if you're aware, is coming out with some new flood rules based on their biological opinion and other issues like that. And one of those new flood requirements is going to be a setback from wetlands and areas like that in the floodplain. And so I just want you to be aware of that, because that could cause a big damper to a project like this.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Michelle, I know you had your hand up a moment ago, and then it looks like Megan does as well.
Mine was just a little bit of context around this tight lending environment with regard to housing, which seems paradoxical given the knowledge that there is a national, if not global, housing crisis. You'd think maybe lenders would be more open. The problem is that housing, because of the crisis, housing is everyone's cost burdened, and that's what creates the risk. People cannot afford to live in these places if they're built. And so it is still inherently risky, even though there's such high demand, because it's incongruent with people's wages. The rents are going to be, and that's where this subsidized environment, we have to come up with all these creative strategies to bring those rents down to something that the market can bear and that people can actually still put food on the table. So it's a really crummy scenario. And I don't see another path forward. The only question I have is the extent to which there have been conversations with other large employers in Tillamook about their interest in pre-leasing, just to not put all of our eggs in one basket.
That's
I met
totally,
with I want to just add real quick. I met with Trevor yesterday, and we have an appointment with the Creamery.
We were just using that as a very straightforward example with Adventist making that. I mean, they clearly have the demand. It's clearly right there, but I think it could be split across. Or if there's more, I think that's why when we were talking with Parker, this avenue of the county, like essentially seeing if people are interested in pre-leasing, because if that was piled up, aside from us, there could be other projects that could take that and kind of run with it across the county, basically. So as a systematic way of building it, it makes a lot of sense.
And I just want to interject, looking at the fact that there's 22 people on this call. I want to be clear, the Adventist Health Tillamook has not made any commitments to this. This is exploratory.
Not at all.
Please do not go out and tell everybody that the hospital is buying a lot and putting housing on it. Please do not do that. Thank you.
No, yeah.
Michelle, I was going to, by the end of this. Megan, do you still have a question?
Yeah, it was pretty much covered by, I wanted to cover the FEMA thing. Thank you, Dave. And also, you just mentioned that the hospital, so who's going to be maintaining this once they're developed?
Do you want me to take that?
Yeah, please, Steve.
I've actually been talking to Sarah about her real estate firm potentially doing the leasing and management because they're local and this is a smaller project. I also have spoken to another leasing and management company that's out of Portland that would be able to handle this project as well.
Okay, and then is this only going to be open to hospital employees, or like you said, will it be open to like?
No.
Again,
that
was just an example.
That's like a best case scenario, right? We sit down with the CEO of the hospital. He comes back. He's like, "We want the whole building." You're like, "We want it all," and we'll do a master lease 5 years right out of the gate. I mean, because they have a B+ credit rating, we can take that, paper it up, go to a bank, and they're going to be great. But it could be 50% the hospital, 25% creamery, 25% county employees. I mean, I assume you guys probably have a pretty good credit rating too. It doesn't have to be specific to any one workforce, but
just to bring this back. Pardon me. Go ahead, Megan.
I was just saying that was good news because there's quite a bit of people in Tillamook that need housing, not just hospital employees. So that's
absolutely.
Oh yeah.
And we're hoping with the reach out efforts that Parker is I guess navigating right now or whatever, that the feedback you're going to get is it's not just 36 doors. It's like we found 300 people. We found a huge, and then we could take a chunk of that and apply to the Manzanita project and get that pre-leased. And it's just like then it's like we're off to the races basically.
Yeah, Steve, before I see other questions, but before we go, could you just go over your list of what is needed to get this project off the ground again, just so that we can recontextualize like how we're talking about this right now?
You want me to just what I mentioned before?
Yeah, just list off the bullet points pretty much.
Okay, I'll try to be super quick. Number one, help with 100 pre-leasing this project. That is pivot. That's key, and we can dig in on how we do that. If that's just you guys teeing up folks for us to sit down with and draft up LOIs or term sheets, however we want to do it. But pre-leasing, number one. Number two, deliver the site shovel ready and clean. Number three, funding. We need as many grants, forgivable loans, or low to no interest loans as possible to get this over the hump.
Thank you. Just hope everybody takes a moment and appreciates how hard it is to get these projects going. Dave and Sarah. Sarah, you want to go first? You got two hands up.
Sure, Parker. I just wanted to let everyone know, yes, we're all talking about the BIOP. It's a big deal. It is going to impact housing. I think I'm frozen, but can you guys still hear me? Okay. I've talked to Parker. I will be giving the Housing Commission a presentation on this matter in August. So please come to the August 1st meeting. Thank you, Dave. Yes, you will want to be there, and I would strongly encourage you, any of your housing partners, real estate friends, and others that you are visiting with or that help you with your housing efforts, please encourage them to come to this meeting. It'll be important. So
we'll bring a party.
Please do. Yeah. No, because it is going to change our housing landscape. So I would say I don't know a lot right now. I gave a presentation to the Board of County Commissioners yesterday. You can watch that on Jane Scott. You might have better audio if you wait for Jane Scott. I'm about an hour and a half through the meeting. I am after Parker, who did a great job presenting Kevin Shaluka's property tax exemption to the commissioners. So good job, Parker. I am after Parker and before Rachel Haggerty. So if you fast forward through the meeting, and it's about a half hour, but it would be a good thing for everyone to listen to before my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. And yes, Kevin Schulke's application for the workforce housing tax abatement was successful. So a little bit of news for you guys. Dave.
What did you say the asking price was for the property west of the hospital?
There is no asking price. I've had a conversation with Don, the owner. We didn't talk price. I'm modeling our price on what we can pay a door. Basically, I'm offering the maximum we can afford, which is $350,000.
We're trying to set, yeah.
We're trying to set a reasonable bar here. We can't repeat what we've kind of fallen into in Manzanita. We need this deal to work, and we have to all be reasonable from the beginning. I know he didn't pay for the land; it was given to him for free. So there's only upside there, and obviously the land needs cleanup, and we're only going to basically take a little over 50% of it. So I think based on, see, the problem is I can't, there's no real data, but I feel like that's a fair price based on what I see here in Portland.
Well, it's based off of market rate data for what building housing and what land cost should be per unit. That's kind of how we approached it, basically. So when you work through all the numbers, that's what's possible.
Thank you.
All right. Well, with that, I think we will move on to our next item. I'm actually going to jump ahead to pre-leasing so that I can show you guys the intake form that I have come up with. And give me 1 second. I will begin to share it. Thank you, Steve and Clay. Does anybody have any final parting questions about for Steve and Clay before we move off of this?
Just thank you, because I know this is a lot of work and you're not standing to make much, if anything, on it, even if it goes through, and you're definitely not making money doing what you're doing now. So just know that your efforts are appreciated.
I appreciate that.
Appreciate that.
All right. Well, I'm going to take us into our workforce housing intake form. And I'm just going to run through very quickly the questions that I have come up with for this forum. It begins with lack of housing has negatively affected my business or organization. My business or organization has struggled to recruit or retain employees due to housing-related issues. All of the employees at my business or organization have adequate and secure housing. My organization or business is willing to engage in conversations about workforce housing. My business or organization is willing to spend resources on securing housing for employees. For all employees to be secured housing or securely housed, my organization or business would need access to the following number of housing units. If workforce housing units were available today, my organization or business would consider master leasing the following number of units. There is an explanation of master leasing that accompanies this on the when you enter it. If you do not know the status of your housing needs, would you be willing to survey your employees? My business or organization would like to be contacted by developers of workforce housing. And then some questions or comments. Contact information, and just how many employees does your business or organization have? And I included an extra button for I have seasonal staff, and this is a multiple. You can select multiple of these for that. So with that, I think I will drop this back here, and we can see the long form version of it as we discuss, and if anybody has any questions.
I think you should add a 50+ employee button.
Okay.
Isn't that what our major employers are qualified as? 50+?
I will add that. We
have 500, and I think the Creamery Tillamook County-wide is about the same, I believe.
Maybe I'll add a 50 and 100.
Yeah.
I'll take out some
So
of
you
the
could
smaller
really
numbers.
distinguish, because
Yeah.
20 is pretty low, and we're really looking at the big employers for this also.
So I'm not sure I agree with that, Kristen, because for example, Space, 30 employees, they might be interested in doing something like, one or two. So I think that you need to keep your mind open about that part.
Yeah, I didn't mean to discount the smaller employees, but to be able to distinguish between really large and more moderate.
Yeah, and when I think about this survey, I don't know where you're going to send the survey, Parker, but if you send it to an HR person or a finance person or a business owner, or I think it's really key that survey gets to the right person.
I agree, and I'm not just going to blanket send these out. I am going to ask all of you to help me get this into the hands of the people that are in the right place for this information.
Cool.
I'm not integrated into this community like you guys. I will need help for this, and we will have to reach out to other people who can help us. But that's the value we bring in this scenario.
Yeah, and I go back a little bit to the time where we had everybody in one room and we had the housing summit, and whether or not we could have a meeting where important leaders in the community were together in one room and we educated them. I still think that's a super great way in Tillamook to get the word out and get people working together.
Clay, you got a comment?
Yeah, and I don't know if it's too fine-grained for this initial question. I think this is amazing, by the way. Like, the data is so important to share, and when you get into the community enough, you understand it pretty well. But for people coming in understanding the true numbers of workforce housing data is super critical. So this is great. I was cheering in the background each slide I saw, so that was good. The one thing, I don't know if it's for this or not, but we usually get in these conversations. We got in a conversation with school district and I think Providence too, and eventually it's well, how much, what is the cost of a one-bedroom apartment that you'd like to see, or that your employees would like to pay, or what's a fair number? I think that's kind of fine-grained. Maybe it's not part of this, but eventually that becomes the next level of questioning. Well, our average one-bedroom or living costs for our employees would average at this number. Not even tying it to apartment. Just what's the average number your employees pay for housing a month? That would be good data. I don't know if it's part of this or not. I'm just throwing it out there.
No, that would be good to know. That would inform us on what our unit matrix should look like.
Michelle?
I was curious if we got a robust response to this survey, if Steve and Clayton, you were to take that to a lender, would that bolster your likelihood of getting funding?
I think with the county producing the data, that's a really important factor. Eventually, they're going to want when they're doing a pre-lease and getting a commitment from somebody, they want the credit rating of that group, right? Just like if you're buying a car, they're going to check your credit. Same situation. If a business is going to pre-lease this, how do we know that they're going to actually do it? And it comes down to the credit rating, which, again, there's so many strong local businesses in Tillamook County that I feel like there's a lot of option there. And maybe you're putting a couple together or something, but it kind of comes down to that a little bit more.
Sorry to interrupt, but that brings up another question. If you have a very small business, even, I don't want to use a dairy farm because most of us have housing on site, but a restaurant. Restaurants don't have, I mean, do they have credit ratings? I guess they do. It's not, but not like an A, B, do they? Am I crazy? I don't know.
I'm not worried. Yeah, they're only going to absorb maybe 1 or 2 units, so that's not really
Right.
our focus here. Our focus is
Okay.
getting master leases. You know, getting the hospital to step up and take down 20 doors, getting the creamery to say 10 doors or whatever. Those numbers get us close to our 36 unit door count, and that opens up the funding. I don't want you guys to think we're going to exclude the smaller businesses. That's not our goal, but for the purposes of funding, and to create partnerships where we can have success beyond this project, it's kind of critical that we get some of these big players to step up and
Okay.
commit.
While I'm still off mute, I just want to throw out, maybe we should be also talking to the mills, to Hampton and Stimson.
We are going to be talking to everybody that you guys want to take this to. There is going to be a QR code and a link, and you're going to be able to take it to the people you know and ask them to fill it out. Sit there and fill it out with them. It is a 10-question thing with like a few bonus like contact information questions. So this thing can be taken and done really quickly. If they want to estimate it, maybe I should put a button in there for this is hard data or this is estimated data from the person entering it. I don't know.
I wonder if we could put an AMI question in there, like where is the ballpark of your employees according to the AMR chart?
Or just he just asks average salary. That would be we could go from there. We find explaining AMI takes a couple minutes for most people. So
yeah.
We can go and look up salary data too, Kristen. We have it by industry. That's available.
Just
wouldn't it be better coming from the employer themselves? Because then it gets
absolutely
them to think about it too.
If they want to volunteer it, I've tried to make these questions in such a way that it's not anything sensitive while getting us the data we want, and I wouldn't want it to spook somebody off. But I am happy to add that if that's something you guys feel is important.
Well, if it helps the builders and the banks to understand the data behind the number of units needed, like according to what scale, then it seems like it would be useful to have an income guess.
I had one thing in the big versus small businesses. I would say the biggest thing is getting one of these built as soon as possible, because that establishes market rate for what, or establishes a number for what workforce housing should be in the location. So that way, when you build a 5-unit building down the road, you know, there's numbers for what those shouldn't be marketed as. Right now, it's hard for us to prove to anybody what the rents should be aside from AMI numbers. So if a big company is able to get one of these built, it establishes that baseline, and then things after that become a lot easier. So a lot of the things that Steve and I bring up are really about it's because it's the first project. That's the kind of the biggest issues to kind of deal with on the first one. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and because this site is more affordable, the utilities are at the curb, the site is flat, it pencils much better right out of the gate. We think we can get a win here, and that will obviously create the numbers that we need for the other projects, but it's also going to create partnerships for our company and lenders that we can, once we have a success, we can repeat that.
Are you worried about competition from other buyers swooping in?
I mean, this is an off-market property. I'm not really. I mean, we did talk to some other developers about partnering up on this site, and they all said no way, because number one, there's no data, and number two, they can't build enough doors. They needed the rents to be higher. They needed to see at least 150 apartments, and then the floodplain came into play, and they all just walked away. So they're just like, good luck. And Clay and I looked at it, and we're like, talking to Parker, there's a hospital next door. They need housing. Let's just build on the one part of the site we know is out of the floodplain. and let's just use our model that we have for Manzanita that we know works well, and let's get a win. I mean, they're going to be beautiful buildings. And I think probably the first new housing in 20 years probably in that city.
Well, maybe at 100%. We have Willett and Holden Creek that have both come in the last few years, but they're affordable housing projects.
The only middle income housing we have recently is the Kingfisher.
Yeah,
right.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
All right. Is there any other questions about the? Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, so I think that to kind of tack on to what Kristen and Clay are talking about here, I think the essence of this, the information that we need, the essence of this is really what portion of our our staff, and of course, usually these businesses have a range of salaries and staff positions. What portion of our salary range folks are looking for housing? So in other words, an employer might say, we've got a bunch of people in the $25 an hour category that are really in most need of housing or having the most difficulty finding housing. And so I think a combination of understanding where the appetite is and how that relates to the salary range within that group. So I'm not sure we need a lot of confidential information other than some general information about who in their staff, particularly for some of these larger employers, who in their staff are having the most trouble finding housing and what generally is their wage rate. And that, I think that really drives an awful lot of what we're trying to get to here.
Phil?
Yeah, I was just going to, not really a counterpoint, but just a consideration to what you've shared there, Dave, is I've been working in community and population health for close to 10 years. And one takeaway that I have is we don't know that much about our employees here or the community members that live here because they don't really want people to know their sad stories. They don't want people to know that their kids are living on other people's couches, and the employers probably are not very well informed of the personal status of living of most of their employees. I can guarantee there is not as good of knowledge or understanding for most employers and most of our community members that are struggling with housing. So that's just a consideration that we need to be cognizant of.
Well, and that also might be some information that we can gather from the school district. I know that they end up with a little bit different information just based off of how they ask the questions and how to be able to serve families that are within their area. But I was thinking about this, the housing need is so great. These units of this size could probably just be filled based off of people that are double living in a house with, like relatives. That is a thing that happens here really commonly, is that we don't have housing. So while we have a roof over our head, it's a shared cramped environment that, we're making it by because this is what we can do. So.
Sarah Lou Heath had a +1 for the school district's idea. Well, any other comments on this part of our discussion? Well, then I think I'd like to close this part of the meeting with a little bit of an anecdotal story, something that happened to me this week. I think in many ways, this might be my first workforce housing success here, but I was contacted by a local restaurant owner because they were about to lose their two best employees because they've been sleeping in their car for the last couple months. These guys make about $50 an hour this time of year with tips, and I connected them. I told them first, hey, I'm the more of the housing development coordinator, but I'm going to, of course, do whatever I can here. And I think I connected them to someone who's going to be able to make a situation that works. But what was key here was I asked the owner if he would be willing to co-sign on an apartment for his employees. And I told him that because they are servers and it's seasonal, that's really gonna make a big difference on finding them some housing that could work for them. And this restaurant owner pretty much immediately was like, these employees are everything. They're my entire business. Like, yeah, I'll co-sign on this with them. So I just wanted to let you guys know that at the very smallest scale I could imagine engaging in workforce housing, a restaurant owner is willing to step up and co-sign on a lease for their young server employees so that they can get housing and they can work here. And I just wanted to share that. Michelle?
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I just realized I am double booked and I know I'm on the agenda, but I have to leave to prepare for a 10:30 meeting that I'm
No
in charge
problem.
of.
I'm
So
sure we can handle
apologies.
it.
I
No
would have
worries.
chatted it in, but it's disabled. So thank you. Sorry.
No problem. All right. With that, I think I'd like to transition us over to talking about the agricultural worker housing tax credit, and we'll try to briefly give a couple of updates on that. I have not had any follow-up emails from the farmers with whom I am aware are seeking on-farm housing. So I'm going to try and do another round of follow-ups with them to get this information about the workforce housing tax credit into their hands. Dave and I have also been having ongoing conversations, mostly Dave, with Martin Jarvis about this. And I have gone to talk to Heather over at Zawald Trucking about potentially applying this to some projects that they have in the mix. We're not sure if we're going to get there yet, but we are still trying very hard to find a scenario where that would work. And we're trying to find scenarios where this could be applied as broadly as possible in Tillamook County. So with that, Dave, is it okay if I shoot it over to you to kind of catch us up on what Martin had to say most recently?
Yeah, just to kind of remind everybody, this is a tax credit in the amount of 50% of the qualifying costs of housing, and basically all costs of a development or a purchase of housing qualify except for the land cost. What we recently have learned is that the on-farm program, which is an expedited program, has got some credits that are not spoken for yet. Can be available off farm in the sense that as long as the land is owned by the employer, that it will qualify and does not have to be zoned EFU. So I think that's a big piece that we've been kind of wondering about, and I think adds to the attractiveness of this credit. So, for example, in thinking about Clay and Steve's project, if the creamery were to own the land or the land under one of those units, for example, our understanding is that it would qualify for this 50% credit. And so we need to be mindful of that. And as you know, we also learned that for example, milk truck drivers who participate in the onloading and offloading of milk qualify. So it's a relatively broad range of employees that would qualify for this credit. So anyway, it's a remarkable credit. It's almost too good to be true, and we're really looking for somebody to apply for it as a test case to make sure it works the way we think it does.
So, Dave, let me ask you some questions. One of the people I was thinking about a good target would be the smoker, specifically because it appears that they own a parking lot across the street from their production facility. Would that be a location where they could take a piece of that parking lot and put some housing down and potentially apply this housing tax credit?
Boy, Parker, I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Dave, go ahead.
I guess that's all the update I've got. Oh, sorry, wrong Dave.
Oh, sorry.
Dave
No,
Madison.
I was just going to say the parking lot for the smoker up here in Bay City, that is in the floodplain. Sorry.
Thanks for that, Dave.
No problem. I'm the Davy Downer today. So
the buzzkill.
If for no other reason, I think that this is highlighting the importance of everybody attending the next Housing Commission meeting in 2 weeks on August 1st to get the full rundown on the FEMA buyout.
Yes. Yes, it's very important. It keeps everyone well informed because it is going to be very impacting. They're saying could be 170-foot setback from the current floodplain boundaries for development. There still would be development allowed in there, but it would have, and I think Sarah can explain this further, there'd be much
David,
more
let's
critical
just wait
steps.
till
Anyhow,
let's wait till August. We'll start diving into it then, if that's okay. Sorry, man. I'm going to move us off the agricultural workforce housing tax credit unless Dave Bennett had anything else to add for the updates right now.
Nothing more.
Any questions or comments on this before we move on? All right, I am going to interject something into the agenda now because this came out shortly after not shortly, a couple days after I put the agenda out. You have heard me say the words housing production a lot, especially in regards to the state of Oregon and how they are addressing the housing crisis. This week, the state of Oregon released their housing production framework. You can expect me to send this out to you all in an email after this meeting. But this is the state of Oregon running through what their next steps are to meet their statewide housing production goals. Included in this will be there are many pillars, and these pillars include things like less complexity and cost for housing development, tools for local jurisdictions and housing developers, ongoing funding for housing development, including ongoing infrastructure for housing programs in the middle income category, and strengthening and expanding the state housing finance agency so there are more financing options for the middle housing production. They're also trying to expand the successful initiatives. There is a lot of information here. I'm going to send it out, but I will also have a full brief for the Housing Commission by the next meeting as well. So in the meantime, if there's anything that you have a burning question about when I send out this State of Oregon Housing Production Framework, feel free to shoot me an email or a call, and I'm happy to go over it with you, but it will be a little while until I fully understand it. If there are any other questions on that, I know that that's a lot of information. That's just kind of more of a preview of coming attractions than actually providing anything. All right. With that, I think we will move on over to committee updates. If we don't mind, I'm going to start with finance. And if we haven't had any updates because our meeting schedule is a little weird this time, then go right ahead.
Okay, Finance Committee update. We just talked about the ag worker housing tax credit. I would love to find a test case scenario there. So we're watching for employers who might have an interest. The concept that the multifamily awards that we're making, if they are characterized as loans rather than grants, there's some real tax benefits there. One of the drawbacks of characterizing them as loans is that there's could be a fair amount of administrative work in monitoring the loans and so on. And we've come up with a proposal that we'd like to present to the powers that be as to how we might streamline that process and make it really much simpler than we thought it might be initially. I don't know who we should make this proposal to. It should be Sarah or the treasurer or the commissioners. I'll work with Parker on that, but that is in the works. And if it does work, we would not need the services of a third party like Colpack to administer that for us. We're also starting to think again about this next fiscal year's multifamily housing awards, and thinking about that framework and adding some additional factors that might include things like the current status of the development, the status of the funding, the experience of the developer, the quality of the application, and the amount of the development fee. So we'd like to at least talk about changing those criterion to perhaps better fit what might be more important items to consider in making those awards. That's all I've got.
Thank you very much, Dave. Are there any questions for finance? Legislative?
Yeah, related to finance. what's the status of uh, the effort to get the pass-through funding from those state agencies?
We will be hearing from DEQ by the end of the month. I wake up every day, roll over in my bed, and check to see if the EPA has made their grant announcements yet. You will all be the very first people to know after I do.
Thanks.
All right, well, legislative, we are having to be reconvening on September 18th at 4 p.m. to, we decided to go on hiatus just due to a transition in my employment, since I'm now at Neoconi School District. So I will be leading that meeting at that time. So in the interim, we are reaching out, hoping to have some continued conversations with our state representatives at the legislature to find out where they're, and I believe our main focus this go around with in 2025 is going to be infrastructure. But we are going to be having a kind of final wrap up to see if we need to adjust our focus this season or this upcoming legislative session starting in 2025. And I'm also down for development committee, but I think that was an error. So Parker, if
That
you
was
can.
an error. I will take development committee. I think that the important updates that I'd like to share with about the development committee, we've started talking about the raw property in that group. To refresh your memory, the raw property is the roughly 46 acres that the county owns out between McCormick and Marloff, just south of the community college. And I've been updating them on my ongoing conversations with Regional Solutions and DEQ as we continue to try and find a wastewater solution to that site that could allow it to be developed while the sewer problem in Tillamook is resolved. So we should have a better idea of what that will look like over the coming month. And hopefully by the August meeting, I will have a good update, but I expect that to be the September meeting when I next have a quality update for progress on what the solutions at the raw property may or may not be, what is going to be allowed, and what sort of funding sources there may or may not be for it. So you will get an update on that as that project progresses. My other development committee update is that we need more members on the development committee. So if you are interested in joining the development committee, please shoot me a text. We meet on the last Monday of the month, and we do have some ex officio members, but it would be nice if we just had a little bit more presence. So if you're interested in joining that committee, please let me know. That would be very appreciated. I'm going to ask Sarah or Kristen to give the outreach and education update because they were awesome and managed to have that meeting without me as after I double booked myself to go to Bay City with Breyer to talk about a Habitat for Humanity project up there. So really want to give a shout out to the Education Outreach Committee for taking care of that without me.
We really benefited from having Parker at our meeting, so thank you for that sacrifice.
Thanks, Breyer.
So we did a lot of talking about ADUs, and correct me if I'm mixing this with a different meeting. We had talked about ADUs and getting the information out to each different community about how ADUs might be able to be utilized within their community, and kind of brainstorming on with each different part of our county being so diverse in how they handle things. Trying to figure out a way to communicate that with the masses of like, hey, do you live here? This is how an ADU can be applied in your neighborhood, basically. So we did a little bit of to-do listing that we all have, and the to-do list consists of really reaching out to each of us have an area that we're going to make sure that we are kind of the subject matter expert on, and going from there. I think that I froze, so if you can't hear me, I apologize.
We can hear you.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that was the gist of it. I had to step out a little bit early.
And we're also working on getting out more regular press releases through the Facebook page, which then gets sent to all the county community Facebook pages. I'm hoping that many of you are seeing them. If you're on Facebook, that you're seeing our county messages coming out. And I send them out to the community, so I get these very annoying pings all the time that tell me how many likes they get or what kind of comments they have, and it's kind of predictable. They are definitely getting a lot of responses from people. In part, the knee-jerk response that is always like, how dare the government make any decisions on what I can do with my land, mostly objecting to the fact that ADUs can't be used for short-term rentals. And a lot of questions about, can I put an ADU on a less than 2-acre rural property, specific things like that. But people are definitely thinking about it and liking and responding.
Thank you so much. Is there any other comments for the committee updates?
Okay, this is Dave. With regard to the development committee and the raw land that the county owns east of town, developing a site like that is so complex and takes a lot of expertise and time. And frankly, I don't think we in the county have the bandwidth or the staffing to do that quickly. And we need that land to help us with housing production. It could be a remarkable resource for us. Would it be appropriate for us to put an agenda item on this next month's Housing Commission meeting whereby we might consider allocating a portion of our multifamily housing fund to be used to hire some consultants who could take a look at that parcel, help us understand what the challenges are and what some of the solutions might be? We've got some carryover funds from the prior year that aren't being used. So in my opinion, $50,000, $70,000 allocated to that project for consulting work is something that is worthy of consideration. Could we put that on? Would it be appropriate to put that on next month's agenda?
I will absolutely put that on next month's agenda for discussion, and I'll make sure that the commissioner is aware that that is a conversation the Housing Commission would like to have.
And in the meantime, if we, in the event that it is approved, in the meantime, we might be thinking about who those consultants might be. Love to fast track that project.
I absolutely agree, Dave. I think it's a priority.
Yeah. Okay.
My last question for everybody is, how did you guys like this mid-month meeting that was digital only? And I'm asking this because we do have a lot of activity going on over the next few months. And one path we could take to have a little bit more engagement would be to consider publicly noticing this meeting as a standing meeting, utilizing it when we need to for a more specific targeted presentation type meeting. That's not something we have to talk about now. I think we'll revisit that at the next meeting, but as we exit this meeting, I wanted you guys to consider if this was more productive, if there's a place for this type of meeting where we meet only digitally, and if there's a place for a second kind of Housing Commission meeting of some type, if you all felt it was valuable. And we'll pick that up at our next Housing Commission meeting. I just want you guys to reflect on that as we wind down the meeting. Carrie, would you like to close it up for us?
Sure. Is there, after our robust conversations today, is there anybody that would like to make public comment? There's some few hanger-oners. So if there's anybody out there that has any questions or would like to pose a question, this is your time. All right, well, it sounds like we have no questions. So thank you guys. Our next meeting is scheduled for August 1st in person at the Port of Tillamook Bay at 9 a.m. So hopefully we will see everybody there in person. And I'm looking forward to another great round of conversation. And we'll see you on August 1st.
Thank you so much, everyone.